Revolution Radio. Revolution.radio, in fact. Where it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. I've been in there for an hour, a bit longer, and this is show number 399.
Correct.
990 and 300. Am I right?
Yes.
Oh my God, I did count correctly. We're going to talk about progression as in the context of reincarnation. Really interesting stuff. And Stephen Lutz, thank you very much. Shout out to you. I'll mention you a bit later. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. If you missed Solaris' show, and today she had the Matt Painter and John Wayne there. They had a bit of a round table, which I listened to. So I can say with the hand on my heart, really interesting stuff. It went everywhere. It really did. Really enjoyed it. There's a lot of knowledge between those three guys. I found it fascinating and enlightening, and also a little concerning. It certainly should concern you if you listen to it as well. Now, if you missed Solaris' show, right, and as I said, it was today with John Wayne and Matt Painter, then you can just go ahead and join up to listen to the archives. So at $5 or $5.95 a month, and you get access to all of the Freedom Slips archives. Right, you can check out her shows, our shows, anybody's shows. It's all there in the archives for you, for your own research. Maybe you want to listen to something again. Maybe you missed something. Maybe you'd like to transcribe our shows. That's fun. We'd really like that if you did that. Well, I'm just kidding, but I would love it if you did. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I broadcast, which is the Rug people, and for Dave.
The Dark and John.
Thank you, Dave. And we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. In an important part, and in fact, today I went to Barangaroo with my kids and my wife and so forth, and my mum, and we just did a bit of ride around there, looking at the casino as it's coming up. But of course, there's actually a really interesting little, not a shrine, but there's quite a bit of material around the Aboriginal first inhabitants of that site, which is really, at the edge of Sydney Harbour there. Very interesting stuff. So if you ever get a chance to go there, please do. And it's also like a cinematic, entertainment session that you can book into, which will tell you a lot more about the Aborigines that used to live there prior to the colonization by the British. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff. A lot of history, going back tens of thousands of years. But very quickly, there was a bit of a round table, and then Dave just said one of our rants. No, it wasn't a rant so much, maybe a little bit, but it was very, very interesting. And if you do catch it in a replay, maybe do listen to the whole thing. It goes in a lot of different directions, a lot of interesting information. But again, it's all about the color and the breadth and the different opinions that this station brings you. A lot of people have put a lot of their time into the information that's being broadcast here. All of it is, pretty much for free, meaning we have no payment schedule for any of the hosts. It is an entirely listener-funded radio station, right? That's critical to understand. In fact, the biggest in the world, listener-funded, that is. So if you can donate, if you can click through to this, some of the sponsors on the homepage for Revolution.radio, if you can spare the money to subscribe to the archives, any of those things will help run the station into the future, right? So I think that's an important little endeavor. And if you like the information, it's free, right? If you can't afford to donate, that's okay. Listen to the information anyway, right? Don't feel bad. Not everybody can afford money. It's a thing. We are broadcasting for everybody. It's a completely egalitarian radio station. This is not for the rich or the poor or the middle class. It's for everybody, because the information that we broadcast is critical at this juncture, probably well beyond critical at this point. I'm thinking about things that are happening here in Australia, but elsewhere in the world as well. We're hearing things like unprecedented and once in a lifetime and never before seen, and for the first time since records started, since records started, I should say. And this week in Australia, well, if it's New South Wales, which is on the eastern seaboard of Australia, it's a very, very big state. It's massive. But there were 17 fires burning. 17 fires. And the one thing that kept coming up over and over the last week in news broadcasts was, this is unprecedented. We have never seen fires like this at this time of the year. The devastation, at this point, loss of life, not catastrophic, but, enough to worry you, of course. And I've got a friend who's got a homestead in one of the affected areas, and he lost his little boat shed. Don't think of it like a boathouse, a little shed that he lost. But hopefully the rest of his property is going to be okay. It is catastrophic, and this is just the beginning of our fire season, if you will. It's not even into the fire season; it's still spring for a few weeks. But if this is a preview. No, actually not. No, this is you know he works with us in the company. Yeah, but right. Paul is okay. Paul Hobie he's all right. He sent us a message on Facebook. He also has a property up there. But no, my other friend, he's much closer, and he did lose a boathouse or boat shed to the fire.
I got friends in the path, and looks like Tuesday will be the worst of it.
Oh, so Jesus!
The high winds coming Tuesday will be absolutely terrible, because everything's so not just tinder dry, but absolutely even the fire load itself, the fuel is completely dry. Yeah. There's no moisture even in the trees. We've had nothing, so it's devastating.
So what the trees explode in that kind of scenario. They actually explode due to the heat, and
there were 98 fires, and there was more than the differential between 70 and 98, right? So more than 28 fires, which were not watch and act, but extreme. So we lost.
Oh yeah, no. So the number has gone up, because the last time I heard there were 7. Yeah, there were 17 fires of that magnitude, but now it's gone up. This is only a couple of days in which that has increased. That's catastrophic.
Even extremely coastal areas like Forster, Curry, the town was on fire. Even the palm trees were on fire. Like the palm trees, like the heads of the palm trees were on fire with no contact to other fire. So there's a lot of people convinced that these are, directed at energy weapons. I'm not going to say anything. I have no proof to prove that it is. We know the climate. I think that might be just an escape from admitting climate change, right? But the amount. I laugh, right? But you know where I live, and Tuesday is going to be frightening.
Yeah.
And this isn't, like you said, it's not even summer. And we had 1,500 people, the greatest amount of volunteer firefighters on the planet. So from any country, any state, anything, anywhere, we have the most amount of firefighters fighting this. And we have now a new Boeing. There's a new Boeing aircraft that can refill its load in 15 minutes and come back and fly over and dump, which is brand new to us. We just usually had the sky cranes, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough pre-season fires. It wasn't enough. And so, just to put this into context, right? Mackie, I'm sorry for butting in, buddy, but I just want to say that this is so unusual for us to have such devastating fires so pre-season that they're predicting this will be the single worst event that we've had since we've colonized Australia. Like white people have colonized. Meaning that all they can do is surround places to try and protect them, is what's going to happen. So, and you're putting people in danger, right? I heard, because I've got a scanner, right? and I was hearing the RFS guys say a tree's fallen and we can't get out. What do we do? We need backup. And they said, you don't have any backup. You guys are on your own. You know, commence emergency procedures. Wow. So that means that they've got to use their only water that's left to try and protect themselves in their truck. That's the end of that. Right? So it's a little, for me, it's sort of, it brings home the message, right? And the message is that fire is deadly. Yeah, we build in a country that does catch fire, sure. But the traditional custodians of land knew what the land was able or capable of doing, and their method of clearing the land brought that risk down. So they would burn pockets every year and rotate between different hunting areas, because it's impossible to hunt in a thick wood. So they would burn a section and they would live in that, and the next year they'd burn another section, and then they'd go and move into that one. And all the new regrowth attracted the animals in which they could hunt. I mean, it's so clever. But at the same time, the effect of continually burning the land was to keep the fuel load down. And, you know, they did it successfully for, what, nearly 80,000 years, right? And we're 200 years in, and we're having all sorts of grief. So they say their only advice is to build structures that can withstand fire. Now, the regulations and the building codes on, you know, within the 100 meters now of bushland, Meki.
Mm-hmm.
They've stretched it. It used to be 20 meters. It used to be, if you read it, you build a normal house. Then they changed it to 20 meters away from it. You got to do some things. Then they made it 50. Now it's 100 meters.
Not enough.
It's still not enough.
Not enough. And you say, why, Mackie? That sounds crazy. No, you're wrong. No, so you have to understand something. Notwithstanding the directed energy weapons theory, when something is very, very, very dry, right? Very, very dry, and you have residual heat. So let's say the fire is 100 meters away from you, or 200 meters, or whatever. But there's this heat. Again, the heat rises and it travels on a higher level than your ground. So on the ground, you seem to be okay, you can breathe quite fine. But the heat from the fire that's near you, relatively speaking, travels above where you breathe, let's say, right? And that heat, right, actually travels to those, you know, further trees and further structures and ignites them, because it is just so hot. I do this. Fire up your barbecue, if you've got a fire one, like, you know, with coal or with wood or whatever, in one corner of it. Just start the fire, make it really hot. And then put a piece of paper on the other side of your barbecue, not anywhere near the fire. See what happens to that paper. After a while, it will ignite. And that's the heat that travels, okay? That's the heat. That's not an ember, it's not a spark flying, it's just the residual heat that will ignite that paper. And that's what we're seeing here. And the problem is, the higher the wind, the more this heat is dispersed, right? And then forget embers.
Downfield. That's right.
Yeah, downfield. So embers are bad enough, obviously, right? Clearly, you know, that's ash embers and all that stuff. But just the heat traveling is enough to ignite, you know, structures, plants, whatever it might be. And that's the danger. So 100 meters is nowhere near enough. What you need, what you really, really need, you need a good half kilometer, right? At least, between you and any vegetation, any other structure, right? And ideally have a wall as well, if you can afford a wall, a very high wall, right? Have sprinklers on that wall, okay, on the top of that wall, going while the fire is on, because the only way to combat that kind of situation is to create a fine mist, right? Because the water droplets in the air, they will absorb a lot of the heat, okay?
Yeah.
And that residual heat then will not travel towards your property. It's a very expensive way of doing it, and I just thought of it, to be honest with you. but it's certainly one that could at least save your life some property. Ideally, another thing is have an underground shelter. So, like, I mean, really underground, where it's nice and cool, with its own independent air supply,
That's right.
air filters and all that. You need that because guess what? You can't breathe fire, right?
No.
That's not going to happen. And people in a fire, Dave, they don't die of the fire. What do they die of?
Inhalation. And inhalation of
Bingo.
heat, not the smoke.
Yep. Correct. Right.
So
it's asphyxiation.
It was
between
1,000 and 1,500 degrees Celsius was the air that this lady breathed in, and she burned her lungs from the inside.
Yep.
So there was no
think about it for a
resuscitating
second,
her
right?
back to life again. Her lungs were incapable of processing oxygen.
Yep. It is a huge issue, and the thing is this: I remember really bad fires a few, or maybe not 15 years ago, maybe longer. Essentially, the entire summer, Dave. I don't know if you remember this. There was an orange glow just beyond the Blue Mountains, and I was living in Crow's Nest at the time, I think. And my mother and brother were living in Westmeads. If you're in Sydney, then you know what I'm talking about. But essentially, I couldn't use the M2 because the Lane Cove National Park was on fire. They closed the entire M2, and I had to go the M4, which is really through an urban area. So there's no parkland that could go up in flames, and it was bad. It was really, really bad. But this is worse. This is worse. And I live in a fairly wooded area. Out west. I'm not bad. I mean,
not Dave Wooded.
Not Dave Wooded. And we have quite a few large bodies of water nearby, which is helpful. But
that'll help the sky cranes.
Yeah, that too, right? But my exactly. My youngest daughter asked, "Nola, is this safe? Are we safe?" Because she heard on the radio, the fires and all that. And I said to her, "Well, because I don't lie to my children, I said, as safe as we can be. I can't give you a guarantee, right? Because there's just no guarantee there.
An amount of risk.
Yeah, look, it's yeah.
And look, I discussed the plan, right? So just remember, any disaster, doesn't matter what it is, if you have a plan and you've practiced a plan so that upon a certain trigger, you have a certain action, you're good to evade fear because you have a plan. Oh, cool. I've got a plan. I can bundle my stuff up, have it ready, because there's no time to make a decision. You just do. So as soon as there's an action point, you do the do, and you're safe, right? You can make yourself safe. And unfortunately, Becky, what we found is some people were already, it was too late. So if you have, in this country, if you have a westerly road that goes through bushland and the wind is coming from the west, that you're going to have a real hard time trying to get out of that and escape that fire. So some people were told to stay in their houses, Becky, because it was already too late. I've got some friends who are overseas right now watching the whole thing through the internet, and they own land up near the Hemsworths. Right? And I've stayed at their house. Really lovely place, right? Except, and that was a second-hand house they had. They saved from being demolished. And they bought the house. They bought the house, and they had that carted there, and then they built another story below it, and then put that house on top. Oh, it's awesome, to be honest. It's really nice. So the problem is they're not able to do anything that they would like to do normally to be able to protect their house. Their house, if the fire goes through, it's lost. But all of her friends, this is my partner's auntie, I suspect, right? In the way of things, she's an old hippie. I mean that graciously. She's a lovely lady, and she used to have school. She used to be the school teacher at the commune back in the 60s, and like she's seen a day, right, with all of these kind of disasters and things. And she said, look, if we were at home, we'd have a plan. We'd be able to escape. We would, what do you do with your pets, right? So I talked to my kids, and I said, okay, what pets can we put in the car? Not do we want, but what can we put? We can't put the chickens, right? I'm not going to look like a family from the 70s crossing the border from Mexico to California with all the chickens in the car. That was from a TV show. I'm not doing that. So we can have the dog, we can have the cat and the bird. I think the bunny maybe, just a maybe. Probably not. Just put the bunny inside. And if we lost the house, I don't care. If my house burns down, Meki, I will not care at all. I'm fully insured. Yeah, they just, grind it off at the ground and build me another one. Right? I really don't care. I've got nothing in this house except for some photos. Right? That's it.
Yeah, I just received a meme information, not a meme, it's a bit of information I want to share with our listenership, especially our Australian compatriots, our colleagues and brothers in arms, our national, and national neighbors, Australians. Listen, June 2019, in the middle of the worst drought in history, the expletive LNP government cut funding to New South Wales Fire and Rescue by 35.
Yes.
That's burned out. Create like an like the city of the
all the that in oil.
hot. None of the speeds this and step years, you know, by far a little more other it goes it's another talking about, you know, not weeks or months. Look,
In we it was a where but the smoke anywhere.
That's well, people talk about depopulation. Good. Yes. You okay?
Take
Yeah.
least
Yes. So, right to get an education, and you actually, well, there's that. So you just destroy every them, clean this, right. Cannot this is all over the place. You could think if only else. That's what mention of country is very point. The rest of the more if any right. Um,
enough now. Nearly.
not very often. The dangerous class family to carry elements. A civil boy, yeah, that would happen. Yeah,
the people
angle.
you're hardly going to.
Well, during the in 1998, the night, and Jewish world. But Nazi Berlin, in Berlin, shopping and all the people, right? Nazi. So that was people that back then as you thought. There's still this chance. I want
They're
yeah.
Style, but I mean, storm summer got not government parent, right? Good. Representative that works at company A is not allowed under these new rules to protest against company A because they're an employee. And then that's all against the law. So, you know, the whistleblowers are gone now, right? Whatever the hell that meant in the past, right? Where you point out illegal activity.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to talk about that anymore because now you're the criminal, apparently. What? So, I mean, there used to be a nice set of levels. I'm taking this a bit far, but nice set of levels. Like
Sure.
You've got the government, you've got companies that have to behave within certain legislation, and then you've got the people who work for the companies with an agreement of hours for money, right?
Yeah.
And that's all meant to be above board. Everything is meant to be, you know, work okay. But if the company does something wrong, you should have been able to speak out against them, and the government should have come down and said, you've got to change your ways, you're doing the wrong thing. You're not allowed to have children in the mines. I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
All right? But when the government itself says, if you're working for us and you see us do something wrong, you're not allowed to tell anyone about it. Just keep moving on. It does remind me of not an, I shouldn't say an autocracy, because an autocracy doesn't have to be violent, right? But or misbehave. They just are autocratic. They just give you commands. You just do the commands. But when did it become like this? At what point, Meki, and what was the trigger, I wonder, that has led us down this path where it doesn't... I think big business had such a power of rights, where the government's legislation is no longer effective. So I don't know, we want to be able to have people die at work. It doesn't matter anymore, right? Doesn't matter. Let's just all die at work, except for the government. But everyone.
Are you talking about Australia specifically, or anywhere?
Yeah, I'm just giving that example. But this should apply everywhere. It doesn't matter where it is. And I know there's some countries who, like those people who get the sulfur from the volcano edge, and they have to break off the piece of sulfur and put it in baskets and carry it for miles, and they're breathing in the equivalent of hydrochloric acid, because the hydrocarbons and the acid combines with the moisture in the air and in your lungs, and then it turns into hydrochloric acid, and you just boil away, or sulfuric acid, I should say, sulfuric acid. So the sulfur mixes with the moisture in your lungs and just dissolves them. I mean, there should be some kind of, ruling around, that you, I don't know, have to wear breathing apparatus, right? But there isn't any. And the company that's making tons of profit off this sulfur should be responsible for those lives of those people, but they're not. So I think, as workplaces go, you shouldn't die at work. Doesn't matter what work you do, you should never die.
So, to be clear, Dave, that ship has sailed. That ship sailed a long time ago. Sorry. And I mean specifically here, there's some instances very clearly stated and outlined. The worst case of this nature, in a first world nation that I know of, right, was the people at the Groom Lake facility that were dying of some unknown disease. So they were like the people, the workers, you probably know it best, esteemed listenership, as Area 51.
There were open pits
that
were meant to,
no.
weekly
No.
burn stuff.
No. Yeah, that's right. They're burning some, but they couldn't disclose what it is, what the chemicals were that were exposed due to national security. So these are people working at Area 51, right? Groom Lake in the States. It's not acknowledged to exist, obviously. And the judge ruled that they cannot know what's killing them. What? Yeah, well, they're being killed, yes, and it's a bad thing. So they got a compensation. That's all goodness, but they wouldn't have a clue where to start the treatment because they don't know what it is that's killing them. Right. But on top of that as well, recently, I think it was Hardy, Tom Hardy. There was a case in Australia, and I could be wrong here, but I think it was asbestosis, but it might have been something else, where people are still. No, it wasn't Tom Hardy. Maybe it was Hardy, but there was a company in Australia. It declared bankrupt. They declared itself bankrupt, and to ostensibly get out of paying the workers' compensation. That's right. But the actual owner. Yeah, the actual owner of the company is still, if not a billionaire, certainly a multi-millionaire. But clearly he doesn't want to pay out the victims of that particular nugget. So nobody cares really.
It took so long to litigate that the people were dropping off like flies.
Oh, this is really this is going to sound really callous, but this is really the strategy. If you've got a terminal disease and it's caused by something, and they got Aaron Brockovich involved in some of this now, believe it or not, in Australia. Yeah, and it is insidious. Yeah. Right now, it's happening right now. It's such an insidious strategy to. Well, once they're all dead, then okay, litigation will still exist maybe, but it'll probably be less because it's no longer that immediate. We just give the family a little payout and off we go. It's all about dollar. Cash. Do you remember Fight Club, the movie?
Yeah.
Or the book? Yeah. So the Tyler Durden, not Tyler Durden, but the actual protagonist in the story is an insurance adjuster. I don't know if you recall this. and the company would send him out to accidents. The insurance company to estimate what would be more, the payout, the potential payout, right, and then class action, or the recall, right, the recall of the vehicle that is at fault. So you would go there, and it's a simple formula. If the cost of the recall for whatever was faulty in a car, for example, was higher than the estimated litigation costs and payouts, then the vehicle would not be recalled. Now, most people thought that was just like a fictional thing for the book or even the movie. No, that's exactly what happens in the insurance industry. It's all about sums and numbers and statistics. And absolutely, if the cost of the recall is higher than the potential legal payout, the vehicles or toasters or washing machines will not be recalled. That's the world we're living in, Dave. So my point stands. That ship has sailed. It sailed a long time ago.
That's absolutely right. There's a town in this state that I live in. I won't mention the town because then you'll know the cause. But they do have the highest lead contamination, and that story was buried. You can Google it. You'll find the story, but nothing was done about it. And now they don't have any water. So I suppose the lead in the water has actually subsided now because there isn't any water. So the problem went away.
Water.
Look at that.
Overrated, Dave. Just drink beer. Jeez, But look at you.
As long as it's not made from water in the town. The other
one,
Let them
eat cake. Yeah.
Because it's just silly me, just making up stories. That's what it is. The other one was the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean sea level rise project, and I forget it's like PMSLB or something. The project that was looking after monitoring the sea level rise has now come under pressure to disclose its real data, because when this story came out,
that should be interesting.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's funny because all the naysayers are saying they faked the data so much so that they made it look like the sea level was rising.
Fakers.
Yeah, and that's because the people paying for it didn't want the sea level to rise. The people who funded it, and because you can't have the sea level rise, that would be bad, right? Can't you hide it somehow? Or we have to change the figures. Sure, okay. So if you change
just
the figures,
just move the land up higher.
That's right. That's all it takes, right? Or dig some. All this, the dredging that's going on in the South China Sea, that should go towards lowering the sea level, right? That's just really funny. Really funny stories. However, the people who are arguing against me online about this sea level rise are seriously inherited opinions.
Are you feeding the trolls? Are you feeding the trolls?
Because I said, look, you show me the data in which... Wait for this, Maggie. I said, you show me the data in which you made your decision to accuse these people of making up the data. Show me the data which proves that, your point of view. And is just silence, right? Like dead air. And I said, well, I can show you my data. I'll do a clip of the graph that I've done in the last 10 years. Here it is. And it shows that the sea level is rising. And it's rising in Sydney. Yeah. It's doing it. And just last week or 2 weeks ago, when the Greta piece went around the world, the Northern Territory government admitted to the sea level rising in the Northern Territory by 20 centimeters. That's 200 mil since 2000. So that's, it's 10 mil a year that it's rising. Now that you can just go, it's only 10 mil. Who cares, right? Well, before then that's 10 times the amount of sea level rise that there's been. And we knew, Mackie, you and I have discussed this, that the sea level would accumulate around the equator more readily than we'd see level rises anywhere else. And overall, the average is lower because you're not getting so much sea level rise in, say, Tasmania or down in Antarctic. But what it means is it is rising. And there's proof everywhere that it is rising. And I'm just going to say that if you don't believe it, you're not a client. There was behind a ute the other day, Mackie, driving to work, and it said, climate change is a hoax on the back.
Yeah.
And there's a real crusty old dude in there driving the ute, and I hope he didn't put that on the sticker on himself, right? Yeah. I was really worried that this is the view. There's a populist view that nothing's changing. Is this just to make it go away? Does this just divide the country into two groups and halve the amount of people that can complain?
Well,
does it make them
divide and conquer, right?
Have to worry about it.
Yeah. The answer is yes, I would say. So, in case it was not a rhetorical question, right?
No, it wasn't. Really.
It is an old strategy. This time itself, from what we can tell, anyway, to divide any given population. Because in fact, division along two is not even sufficient anymore. These days we divide as much as we can, and we can. And there's the music. Come back, please. After the break, we're going to talk about progression in the context of a reincarnation, of course. We are.
See you after the break.
RadioFreedomSlips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mackie Shiny Set Out. This is show number 399. 990 and 300, which means that next week is show 400. And that's really no good way of saying it in reverse. It doesn't sound good. So we are back and we're going to talk about progression. But before we do that, please do remember that this is listener-funded radio, which means that your donation or purchase or subscription to the archives goes a long way towards ensuring that the station stays broadcasting. If you enjoy the information, if you enjoy our show, anyone's show really on the station, then please do support us financially. No one else will. It is really only all of you out there in listener land. Radio. Now, Dave, we are here. We are here, and we're talking about progression. So I want to quickly say how last week I might have mentioned in passing how come we haven't. We talk about regression therapy and people reliving past lives, and then I thought, and it just occurred to me, I hadn't actually done any research at all into it. What about progression? I mean, what about people being progressed into the future, right? So you regress and you relive a past life, but is there a mechanism? And it turns out there is. So during the week, Stephen Lutz, I hope I'm okay in mentioning this, and I hope I pronounce your name correctly, pinged me and made me aware of the research that had been done in that space, in fact, by Dr. Wambach. And not just regression, but also progression. And I've got a few theories around this, which we will share with you as well. And I'm sure Dave has got a few things to say. But so we've put together a little addendum to the Reincarnation show, which looks at some of the findings that were discovered when people, and she was not alone, there are others as well that did this, but she was probably Dr. Helen Warbeck, I should say. She's probably the most famous one in this space, and this would be page number 40 or 50, Dave. I think 40.
Found it.
And it's progression. So it's really very interesting to think about this. But before we can talk about this,
can I just explain what progression is?
Yeah, sure.
Because you're not going to be very familiar with the term. So regression is, as we know, taking you back to a past life, and progression is taking you forward to a future life. Now, before you get maybe either confused or you misunderstand the intention of this, which we've already spoken about, the Einstein time in a box. The theory that all of the time is already predetermined and you just move through, certain points in your life inside like a shoebox, and only that line is followed, regardless of how much you intend not to travel along that line. Unless, of course, you have a deja vu moment and you resist the temptation to to follow the correct path, and you shudder as you swap lanes or different tracks. Mickey, I'm looking at you. So,
no, I hear you.
yeah, you know where I was going with that. So this is one of those things. So progression, the proof has been unequivocally, been agreed that regression and past lives is a real thing. And now we're going to bring you what is it? Still Lombok, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is,
So
it is.
what
Yes.
Lombok found from the future perspective.
Yeah, and we need to start with a view, though. There's a view, and I found a really very eloquent passage which expresses quite well the context. So many physicists, this is a view, right? Many physicists, from Einstein to contemporary quantum physics scientists, have proved that time is a relative coordinate, specific and valid only in our three-dimensional physical world. A mere illusion due to our particular perspective, similar to the illusion that makes us think that it's the sun orbiting around the Earth and not vice versa. Again, it's all about perspective, right? It's all about what you can perceive, and it's all about what you expect to see. According to this theory, time doesn't move. It's us who move along it, like a passenger on a train who sees the landscape passing in front of their eyes, even if the landscape is still, and it is the passenger who moves through it. The spiritual world, not being material, is not subjected to the constrictions and limits set upon us by time. It is interesting to note the incredible consistency shown in all traditions around the world, past and present, describing contacts with the other world. In these stories, there's always a temporal distortion, and we've mentioned this, Dave, many, many times on many, many different shows. Mm-hmm. And normally, it is also the main characteristic of the experience. A day spent there can be a century on Earth, or a year there can account for only a few seconds in the physical reality of our bodies. This is, by the way, and that's why have this here as well, also what happens in dreams. And the dream dimension is probably the one which is the most familiar to us among all the non-material states. We can dream of the future as we can dream of dear ones departed a long time ago and see them in front of us, interacting with us as if time hadn't passed at all. The fact is that in that dimension, time does not exist, and therefore it cannot pass. For this reason, as we can explore past lives, we can also, we should also be able to explore future lives if we wish. About this subject, however, there is a relatively small amount of investigation and literature compared to the research done on past lives. Right? The practical reasons are evident, and such a type of investigation also raises a few complex philosophical points. We need to admit that here we are definitely in a foreign country, more or less where dragons lie, to use the words of our ancestors, in the old maps that touched on uncharted territory. There be dragons. A country which has been explored even less than the afterlife, and where we are just starting to make our first uncertain steps. And I found this passage brilliantly articulated. That's why I included it here. Right, this is a really fantastic view. But Dave, why don't you just refresh us again on Dr. Wambach again?
In Life Before Life, Dr. Wambach described the results of hypnotizing another 750 people and taking them to the time between not until near birth. Usually, body choice of which fetus to enter. If one fetus is aborted, it is possible to choose another. In some cases, the soul who will occupy the fetus is in contact with the soul of the mother and can influence her decision regarding abortion. Dr. Wambach found that 89% of those hypnotized said they did not become part of the fetus until after 6 months of gestation. A large group said they did not join the fetus or experience inside it until just before or during the birth process. They existed fully conscious as an entity apart from the fetus, and even after 6 months, many reported being in or out of the fetal body. Many subjects reported that the onrush of physical sensations on emerging from the birth canal was disturbing and very unpleasant. Apparently, the soul exists in a quite different environment in the between life state. The physical senses bring so much vivid input that the soul feels almost drowned in light, cold air, and sounds. Surprising to me was the frequent report that the newborn infant feels cut off, diminished, alone compared to the between life state. To be alive in a body is to be alone and unconnected. Perhaps we are alive to learn to break through the screen of the senses, to experience while in a body the transcendent self we truly are. Dr. Wambach found that a certain number of people she hypnotized actually saw into future lives. What they saw concerned her, a devastated and depopulated world. So in the early 1980s, Dr. Wambach decided to apply systematic methods. She did a huge study that involved over 2,500 people undergoing hypnotic future life progression. The future life progressions were conducted over a number of years, and several groups were involved in the study. Wambach offered the participants a choice of 5 time periods, 3 in the past and 2 in the future, with the instructions that their subconscious minds would choose one of the periods. Dr. Wambach saw the subjects would sometimes describe future lives. Many spoke of depopulated and devastated world. In the 80s, she started a study involving, is that a copy? Future life participants were given a choice. It was it was proven that the future progression is harder than the past life regression. 6% reported being alive around 2100 AD, and 13 around 2300 AD. 13%. Her findings indicated that the end of the 20th century would bring natural disasters, volcanoes, weather, earthquakes. A new US currency. US banknotes were significantly redesigned between 1996 and 2000 for the first time since the 1920s. Financial crisis, e.g. Asian crisis of 97. Bank failures, yes, but they're specific to the late 90s. And the dissemination of a large number of people. The decimation, not dissemination. That's already happening, dissemination. Dr. Wambach's scientific approach and extensive research provides reliable evidence on the subject of reincarnation. Although one of the pioneers in the field of reincarnation, she is not the only one to have conducted reliable and systematic research. There was evidence, she believed, that there was a decline of up to 95% of the population within a few generations. Concerned, Wambach asked one of her students to progress to a specific date in the late 1990s, but had to bring the woman out of hypnotic trance rapidly after the woman found herself choking to death on a big black cloud. Wambach found predictions for the last years of the century to include severe earthquakes, a new US currency, severe weather patterns, financial crises, bank failures, and an increase in volcanic activity and the decimation of a large number of people. In 1999, there would be an isolated incident in which a nuclear explosion in Europe kills many people. Wambach was working with Dr. Chet Snow, who, after her death, published Mass Dreams of the Future. Sorry, I did that to it. Mass Dreams of the Future. It contains the results of many such in-depth future life progressions, presented in perhaps a more sensationalistic way than Dr. Wambach would have presented it. On the internet, Wambach today is most quoted by those interested in these future lives than in past lives. Meki. Earth to Meki. Meki. Hello.
Here I am, and I was talking into a mute microphone. Look, obviously, not all of these predictions have come true, specifically the nuclear explosion in Europe. However, there's a section I've added to the end where I want to explain a few things around probabilities as well. But the next section here is actually 3 interviews that you can find yourselves on YouTube. I urge you to do so, where Dr. Wambach was interviewed. And this is the interview 2 here. I'm going to share with you. Progressions, it's called. And the author, whose website was taken from, is her name, or his name is Eowyn. And this person has been researching and experiencing reincarnation since 2011. And this is how the person describes the interview. The major part of the second interview is focused on the research Helen Wambach carried out doing progressions of future lives in a great number of subjects. Her methodology was exactly the same, but besides taking them to past lives, she also made them go to the years 2100 and 2300. Something. They essentially said that humanity is in the middle of a cycle that lasts 25,000 years. And according to these ancient cultures, every time this happens, there are great changes taking place on Earth. Apart from that, we're also at the end of a phase called Great Year, which would last 2,145 years. There was evidence, she believed, that there was a decline of up to 95% of the population within a few generations. Concerned, Wambach asked one of her students, like Dave said earlier, to progress this to a specific date in the late 1990s. But the woman woke up choking to death on a big black cloud, as we said earlier. Okay. And, however, it is curious to notice that in general, the scenario across the world that Wambach describes looks pretty much like the one we are currently facing, including the climate change. And given the pace of self-destruction we have in the last decades, with apparently no political interest whatsoever to change it, this is really pertinent considering what we discussed in the first hour, it is quite likely that the Earth's population in 2100 will drastically decline, as Wambach found. I'm quoting here. This is what she said. The group research shows that the Earth in 2100 is largely bearing vegetation. It's largely barren. Vegetation has disappeared from the Earth. People live in enclosed cities, transparent domes. The food stuff they eat is some kind of an artificial one, which they describe as very bland. The population is 5% of what it is today in 2100, so in 8 years' time. Life is also pursued in a space colony, not on another planet and not on spaceships, but on an orbiting space colony where apparently seeds have been brought to the colony. There's some agricultural workers in very limited space. So in all those seed banks we're hearing about, and all this, the arcs, I guess, if this is true, we can see that some of these will actually make it into space at some point. It is quite interesting, the expansion of consciousness that will take place after 2100. According to Wambach, death in that time is a matter of choice. There are no diseases anymore, and anyone can reach 120 and decide they want to be off duty. This gives hope, though in order to reach there, we will first witness how the Earth is destroyed by human activity. And, as matters stand, we will not be able to stop the destruction, at least from the progression research that was done. The good side is the Earth has the power to regenerate itself, and it will do so as soon as a great number of human beings disappear. When the interviewer asks her about free will, Wambach gives an interesting answer. Certainly, it doesn't have anything to do with that nonsense we usually have to hear out there, like saying that Jews that died in the Holocaust did so because they were evil themselves in previous lives. Wambach explains that being on Earth in a physical body means we have to accept certain rules. You might be affected by a life-threatening epidemic like cholera, and you might even die. That doesn't mean you have chosen it. It is a risk we all take when we are living in a planet where disease exists. However, sometimes we do have a plan. She describes the case of one of her subjects that was a Jew in a past life, and he fled from Europe as soon as he saw World War II was going to break out. Why? His answer was, I wasn't going to be part of the Holocaust. It wasn't part of my personal plan. However, there were others that did resolve to stay, and when they were asked after dying in a concentration camp why they did so, they answered because they wanted it to be an example for others. In sum, at a spiritual level, we may have a purpose that escapes our conscious self. And sometimes we may be involved in catastrophes because that experience is something important that was decided upon before birth. This doesn't mean everything is pre-planned and free will doesn't exist. Wambach's final reflection is about what the world will be like when people that know death doesn't exist are a majority. Okay, she says that it is easy to know looking at the behavior of the people that already know. Luckily, they do exist, even though we are just a few. These people are usually peaceable, don't conduct war games, and have no interest in material things. According to Wambach, the best thing we can do to improve the general subconscious is looking for meaning in simple things. Be gentler, be children, pet your dog or cat, or be grateful of the sunlight when it shines. Now, just very quickly on that, it's really important that what you've just heard is actually how most ascetic monks live. It's how the Cathars try to live. It's how the Bogomils try to live. It's how Buddhists, really practicing Buddhists, try to live. Taoists, to divorce yourself from physical wants and greed and any chains that tie you to this world, and to realize that death is not a reality, right? Just another state of existence, or a doorway, if you want to put it that way. Dave, why don't you talk about the possible future, and then I'll just quickly have a final note on that as well.
You got it. The late Dr. Helen Wambach pioneered future progression studies within large groups of people beginning in 1980. What she found, as documented in the book Mass Dreams of the Future by Chet Snow, disturbed her. The majority of subjects who were hypnotically progressed to the early 21st century reported being in a floating state, which she recognized as indicating they were between lives, because many of the people should have still been alive at this time frame. Wambach concluded a large-scale catastrophe, or catastrophes, may have wiped out a significant portion of the population. Things were looking up by 2300 and beyond, where a higher percentage of subjects reported being alive, i.e. in a future life. Snow characterized this era as the outward wave, where people found themselves living in a synthetic space environment, a greatly changed Earth, or on another planet altogether. One subject reported, I was alone, looking at very cold, tall, metallic type city which you couldn't see into. I was tall and slim, all encased in a bodysuit except for face and hands. There was a huge empty space all around, nothing green or growing, no trees, no other people. All was encapsulated in the city, I guess. End quote.
So this is very interesting. Oh, we've just got a question from the chat room. It couldn't come at a better time. Mm-hmm. We're being asked, Dave, if we are aware of the double slit experiment. We are very aware, me, right? So, in fact, this is maybe you could say that. Maybe I'm wantonly. No, so now, there is something to be said for the position of the subjective observer within the perceived subjective time stream. That's a mouthful, but hopefully it become clear. It is possible, in my opinion, that past life experience is possible, is feasible, because from the observer's point of view, i.e. us, it has happened, albeit subjectively. So as far as we are concerned, within the time stream, looking back, again, subjectively, right, and incorrectly, but looking back, it already happened. Whereas progression is still subject to quantum statistical probabilities, at least from the point of view of the subjective observer, again, us, right? Thus making regression easier to achieve, while progression may be more difficult due to the probabilistic nature of subjective time. So what I mean by that is, from our point of view, from our subjective observer's point of view, we're living in the now, right? This is where we are right now, and we can look back into the past because that's how we're structured. We can remember the past, we can't remember the future. So from our subjective point of view, regression makes sense, right? So it is more or less something that has happened. Now, there's some experiments in quantum physics have shown us that the past may also be mutable, right? It may also be possible to change, right? But certainly the future, as far as from our point of view, from our observer's point of view, is completely open to change for the most part. So going forward into the subjective future of the subjects here, of Dr. Wambach's hypnosis, right, may indicate that it is a possible future. So prophecies is always a hard thing because things can influence a prophecy, things can change. And I do want to share with you something that Dave alluded to earlier when we talked about the Deja vu, which is the final part of the show cycle. When I was in my teenage years in Germany, it was a very trivial deja vu that I experienced. Very trivial. I mean, super trivial, right? I mean, it was in the kitchen, and I can't remember the exact circumstance. But instead of in my deja vu, I was going into the kitchen to the cupboard and taking out a plate and putting it on the table, something along those lines as far as triviality is concerned. But what happened? I did not follow my deja vu. So the action in my mind was clear that I had to take, but I didn't take it.
You rebel, you.
I rebel, yes, and I felt a jarring sensation. I remember this very clearly. I don't remember exactly what it was that I didn't do, right? But I remember the jarring sensation, like moving tracks on a record player. When the needle skips across the vinyl. Yeah, I'm pretty old, but yes, it's something of that nature. And you could argue that maybe because I didn't do this particular action, the track of my reality went a different way. And it is all about probabilities, right? And this is how quantum computers work as well, right? It's all about probabilities. And just because we see a certain thing that could occur doesn't mean it will, especially if we have prior knowledge, which makes it really insane. And then we just in the chat room, we just have got me throwing up the YouTube clip of the double slit experiment by Dr. Quantum.
That's the easiest one to digest, by
the way. There's a documentary which I recommend. I recommend the extended version called "What the Bleep Do We Know?" Down the rabbit hole. I found it extremely interesting. If you have a bent into that space at all, please do watch it. But you're right, though. This is explaining it the best that I've ever seen. Explained the double slit experiment. So there is an unlimited number of possible futures, some more likely than others, but none of them written in stone from our point of view, at least. But now if you try to extract yourself from your subjective point of view in this four-dimensional cage that we're in and try to look at it from above, it's as an analogy, or below or sideways, whatever you prefer, you will see that all outcomes are equally likely and are in fact equally real. Mm-hmm. It is only our experiential track that gives us our reality. All other realities are just as real. We just don't experience them. right? Because we follow a certain track of reality rather than another. Sometimes we might switch between tracks, and some people believe we switch quite frequently. But it's such a small difference between these tracks that it goes completely unnoticed. And we've spoken about previously, with dimensional travelers potentially, where their life change or their track change is significant and catastrophic, right? And maybe a number of people in institutions today aren't actually insane. They simply changed tracks. They shifted realities, maybe not physically, but certainly mentally. Maybe, what we like to call their soul or consciousness moved between dimensions. I don't know. All I know is that the correlation that not just Dr. Wambach, but other researchers achieved by looking at regression was astonishingly high. No one has ever attacked her method. Her methods are completely beyond reproach. And solid. So her findings are statistically significant, right, for the past. Going into the future, it's a very, very different proposition and a lot scarier, obviously, right? It makes perfect sense that it is probably not as accurate because there are so many variables still in play, and certainly us knowing about it, and Dr. Wambach having done the research, are we now in a state where we can change something? Dave, you've got a few interesting
I just made some points,
theories
right?
there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just made some points in our chat where we can chat during the show. I said back to give Dr. Wambach's research some context. At that time, this is pre 9/11. Things are looking up. The fear of war was still the most likely catastrophe that mankind is like self-made issue. The rest of the problems were insignificant that we see today. So in that short time, like the 25 years, right, or 30 years, in that short time, right now the most significant expectation for a catastrophe would be a celestial impact. That's the most. We could also have a pandemic, so these are up in the same echelon, right? Our climate or the sun itself could give us some grief. We know neighboring suns in our region are not likely to nova, but if one did, we could have one side of the Earth gamma ray bursted so significantly that it was just blackened, entirely burnt, and all life destroyed, right? We understand now that's a thing. And that these are now the highest level catastrophe, rather than what was then war was the most likely catastrophe.
Yeah, so, I completely agree.
Yeah, in their views, that was it, right? So when that's putting context on those people that went forward, and only just you could see by the description that they were unable to say what it was.
Correct. I wonder, Dave, and this is really around the individual state of mind. Are they drawn to in the future life? Are they drawn to specific probabilistic outcomes because of their state of mind? Are there certain preferences they have, and that's what they see?
You're there's really in the lane you're in because of your the way your current thoughts, your situational awareness, the things you consider dear to you.
Wow. And the key thing here is this, and I'm just there's two things I want to mention, right? So I'm just floating this out there, and I'm not saying I've done much research at all on this. I'm just spitballing
here. Right now, Mickey. That's what we're
doing. Completely. So there was only a few people that had any experiences past 2100, correct? Like only like a handful of people, and so by that, Dr. Wambach supposes, and it's an assumption on her part, right? Because nobody actually states that there was anything that happened, like a catastrophe or a war, right? No one says that. She only surmises it because of the few people that have a recollection of a future life. Is it not equally possible that the people that have a recollection of a future life are drawn to a probabilistic future that might suck them in, Whereas the vast majority of us may be sucked into a different kind of future, but because it's the majority of us, and I'm just spitballing here, there is a wall we can't break through, because it would pretty much dislodge what we like to call reality. Because if we knew exactly what was going to happen to the majority of us, then we also would have the chance of changing it, if you know what I mean. So if you've got the outliers here that they report, a depopulated Earth and no plants existing, those are probabilistic outliers that people might see or experience, in future lives, if they, shift dimensionally per se. Whereas the vast majority of us might move on in pretty much the same way as we have into a world that is, just progressing from this one. But because it is the most probabilistically close world to this one in a timeline track, it is also one that we can't access, simply because there may be a natural law, a natural barrier, or an artificial barrier for that matter, that stops us from accessing the majority of our futures. The outliers we can see, the probabilistic outliers we can see. And I agree with you, the system needs to collapse. I agree. But the problem here is that, again, this is spitballing, right? I mean, it may not be that there is a catastrophe in this particular reality track, right? There will be in outliers, absolutely, because all realities are equally possible, right, and equally probable. We may just not inhabit them, being caught in this particular one. Right? This is interesting.
7.5 billion or 7.7 billion people now. The likelihood of there being 7.7 billion on the planet after a catastrophe is quite low. So
I agree.
So by the choice of the people that she's chosen to do the regression with, is less and less likely that they lived in that period of time. Given that there's a period of time before that you come back, whatever that period of time is, and for the reason that you're injected into that tube for your reasoning, in your your soul growth, or the lessons you need to replay or do again, or you get a second chance, or whatever those things you have to correct or fix, or this is your new goal, is unlikely in a planet with 1,000 people on it, if that was the case, right? So 7.7 billion, your test case is going to be extremely small, and you may not come in contact with very many of them. If there were plants on there, I'm just drawing a picture here, right? So if there were plants, but very few plants, it doesn't mean that it was it doesn't mean it wasn't a nuclear holocaust, and it doesn't mean it's a meteor impact, right? It just means that there may not be a lot of rain. So you might be in a different place. It might have been a high desert, right? You might be living in where those the observatories are in Hawaii, where there's almost no plant life, right? They're above the plant line. So it's a difficult position to draw the entire future from the test group. But I like what she's doing. I like where she's come from. I like the fact that there's been research into it. And just like the Ed Dames group of people who were, ex-Montauk experimentalists, right, who looked into the future, the timeline isn't hard set. There's no ruler measuring when the events happen, but an event happens. And all of the people in the future and all the abductees are all showing a future that is like bleak, and that there's some kind of catastrophe. No one knows what it is. I'm in for the knowledge. I want to know what on earth's going to happen myself. This is the tough part. And I think from all of those, the remote viewers or the future viewers with the kill shot, which both Mick and I have seen that, or whether you're progressing someone in, how do we know it's this Earth? Is the other question I have.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So once we move into the the reality of the world, which is quantum, right? We know that all realities are equally real, for want of a better word, and not to double dutch it. There's a really interesting science fiction novel by Frederick Brown It's called What Mad Universe. In the novel, the protagonist is hit by is well, pretty much at the dead center of a electrical device that has the power of many megatons of explosion, and it propels him into another dimension, into another universe, which is very different from the one he came from. But because he was thinking about certain things as he was propelled into that universe, it resembles that universe.
Oh, nice.
So he was thinking about, yeah, it's a really great book, What Mad Universe, written in the 1950s. He's an editor for a science fiction magazine, and one of the fans had written him a letter, and that content of the letter was in his mind. So he was thinking about the fan, and it colors the universe that he finds himself in, as he is working his way through it and trying to survive this familiar yet completely strange universe. He finally gets the opportunity to leave it with the help of it doesn't matter how, but he gets the opportunity to be exposed to the same kind of effect that he was to enter in the first place. And just as he was exposed to the effect, he thinks, hey, hang on, why can't I just change it to something more to my liking? Because the idea came to him that, while he was living in the universe, he was living out the letter of the science fiction fan that had been written to him, right, as the editor. And he realized that as the moment approached to be propelled back to his original universe, he could make it better. And it turns out that he probably did. The last few lines of that particular novel are quite enigmatic. But the point here is, because it seems to all rest on mind, that's the final conclusion here on these things, is that because everything seems to boil down to mind or thought or whatever you want to call it, right? It behooves us to realize that maybe, just maybe, we are in charge of the destiny of this universe, or any universe for that matter. And we can choose the outcome collectively. We have to choose it collectively. Far from being a solipsist, I do not think I'm alone here, but share this particular reality with billions, trillions, or maybe more, conscious beings. If we all could agree to live in a better world and in a better universe, then I reckon we would be living in a better world and a better universe, right? But we don't. We from an early age, we are convinced that we live in a jungle. We live in a horrible world, and we got to be afraid all the time. We have to be afraid all the time, and this fear creates a world of fear, and that's where we are right now. It's horrible, but it's of our own creation, not of our design, mind you. The design happens somewhere else. We are just used to create this world each moment, right? We didn't design it. The design very clearly happens somewhere else, and it is upon us to make sure it's created in this image of fear, and has been for I have no idea how much time has passed, to be honest with you, right? And this is really also the essence of the hypothesis, which we will discuss again next week, and then for the following shows. Oh my goodness. Dave just gave me a message in the chat here that his area had just been issued a catastrophic fire danger coming Tuesday, which means he'll be at home.
That's the most serious.
That's not good. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should all come to the city and stay in a hotel. Is what I'm saying to you. Just saying it, man. Right?
Yeah. No, I think I have to protect. So I'll do what I can.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Just be safe.
So you're right, Mickey. I'm sorry to take you away from the track.
No. All good.
The message that we're saying, we're giving you, providing you, is that the universe you inhabit in this time around, it appears as though you chose it, or it was given to you because of the tasks you needed to achieve. So I try to think about it like a video game, that you're the person playing that existence of your sprite, which is a computer character, You're the person playing that person's existence. And at the end of it, when that person in the computer game or the thing in the computer game dies, it comes back to you again, and you can say, you know what, I just learned something. I just learned that, you don't go left, jump, duck, and then forward. You pause for a second, then you go forward. Right, okay, so I'm going to go in again. And I'm going to take what I knew last time and then apply it. So, from the perspective of the observer changes the universe, our being within the universe has an effect.
Yep.
Our perception of and our need to know that something is a certain way actually changes the outcome. And that's
correct.
You in the studio, Mackie.
Yeah, no, but look, that's exactly right, Dave. And we have found experimentally that positive thoughts, prayers, believe it or not, have an effect. We know that meditation has a physical effect on the brain. All right, Buddhist monks, specifically of the Tibetan persuasion, who spend a lot of time meditating, have a different brain physiology and chemistry to other people. It's a thing. It's a thing. It's not, just some blah blah, a new age gunk. It is a physical, hard reality that our thoughts ultimately shape reality. Okay, and the double slit experiment, again, if you don't want to talk about meditation, that's because we have absolutely no idea why it is unfolding the way it is unfolding. You observe the outcome, it will give you what you expect. You take the observational tools away, right? Not eyes, but measurement devices, and it will give you reality in totality. And there's no good reason for this at all, because why would reality care if we look at it? Right? If you take the purely mechanistic physics approach that we're just flesh robots, right? If you take that approach, then the experiment or the experiment's outcome makes absolutely no sense. If you allow for a spiritual dimension, for a metaphysical dimension in our existence, then the experiment makes absolute sense. But see, this is where it gets dangerous and hard, because science can't allow that. Science cannot allow for this. Our society can't allow for that. For the last 200 years, in the West I'm talking about, we have been indoctrinated into thinking we are flesh robots and spirituality is for the church. Leave it there. And eventually we're going to abolish the church. It's all good. Off you go. Don't worry about it, right? Philosophy, what? Who needs philosophy? Right? Who needs a creed? No. We have now come full circle, Dave. We realize that our science has taken us this far, which is awesome. I love science. I really do.
I science.
Yeah, I know. It's a process of investigation, experimentation, and research that is self-correcting and is looking for the truth in the physical universe. Awesome. In fact, for the physical universe, I'll be hard-pressed to think of a better way of doing it. But once you leave the physical universe, and once you accept that there's anything beyond the physical, you're pretty much on your own, because we don't have a methodology, we don't have a process, we don't have a way of approaching it, and that's where it falls down. Because unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because it'd be so much easier if it wasn't true, it seems there's more beyond the physical than we are allowing for. Right? There's more beyond the theory of evolution. There's more beyond the classical physics that we were all taught. Okay, this is the cutting edge of science we're talking about here. This is not some mystics sitting on the mountaintop. Even though we're now realizing we should have been listening to those dudes all along. Yeah, they got it right. Oh man. So what do we do? What do we do? What we do is we have to change the way we are. We have to change the way we look at the universe. We have to change the way we look at our lives, because guess what? What we're doing right now is wrong. I can say this with absolute certainty. We're doing it wrong. All of it. It's the wrong way of doing things. It's the wrong way of living. But it's not easy to change. It's not easy to do the right thing. It's not easy to live the right way either, right? But it's not only something that we realized just now, Dave. This is something that we've been told for thousands of years. We've been told the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Love thy neighbor. What? Treat your neighbor or the next person that you meet in the same way that you want to be treated. All right? These are not new ideas. These are not new truths. This has been with us for a long time, but something has worked against this. Something has worked against this stream of consciousness that could make this a much better place, right? Or someone or a group of some things has worked against this, deliberately making the world the way it is. That's why I talk about design and creation. So somebody designed this world, and we help each moment to create it in the image of the design, which I don't think is of our making. Okay, but more on that when we talk about the hypothesis coming up in the next few weeks. And this is really critical, right? And the reason we talk about reincarnation and regression as well, progression, as well as deja vu, which we will talk about next time a little bit, is because it shows you that the system that we're in, the cage we're in, is not perfect. It's not a perfect cage. In a perfect cage, there wouldn't be deja vu. There wouldn't be reincarnation that we are aware of. The reincarnation is real enough, but we wouldn't be aware of it, because that's not good. It puts a chink into the cage. It gives us a little bit of wriggle room. It gives us, just that little, edge for the crowbar to be inserted to try to break open out of the cage, right? But it's not a perfect cage, because these glitches happen. There are, if you like popular culture, there are glitches in the matrix, and we're seeing them everywhere. We like to ignore them. You talk to anyone, and they will all have experienced deja vu. I want to say 98%, 99% of people would have experienced it. And you talk to people on a more personal level, and you gain their trust, right? All of a sudden, you'll find out some really strange experiences that they've had. They don't want to talk about it, though, because it doesn't fit within the design of the reality we're in. People would look at them strangely, because we've all agreed what the reality is like. And if you've got an experience that contradicts that reality, you're crazy. Worse, you're certifiable, right? Nobody wants that. There are no percentages in being different. So we all want to be the same. We all want to have the same experience, except we don't. None of us do. But we ignore and deny, right? And suppress the strange things we experience, the things we can't explain, the things that make no sense within the context of this reality. This is where we are. This is where we live every single day, right? We are in the perfect panopticon.
Yeah.
We are self-policing.
Yep.
We're completely self-policing. Completely self-policing.
And they thought
right?
we couldn't do it.
Yeah, I know, right? It doesn't take much. And you have to get to people when they're young. You have to get to them when they're young. Having said that, this is not the dominant culture on the planet necessarily, right? It's becoming that way, but other societies have experiences and different realities, right? You talk to people in Asia, talk to people in the Amazon or in Africa. They have different views on reality. They experience reality differently to us. Aboriginals in Australia, same thing. Different understanding of time, or no time for that matter. Different understanding of duty and natural rhythms, right? They're going on a walkabout, for example, right? Completely natural thing to do for an Aboriginal person, but if you've got commitments within the Western mindset or framework, it's unthinkable to just off and go and try to find yourself. But this is we're looking at a clash of cultures, a collision, and it seems as though the Western culture or the mechanistic culture, let's not call it Western, is winning, right? It's winning. We are catastrophically indoctrinated, most of us, catastrophically. Free thinkers, no, forget about that. But yeah, so look, I think, Dave, we've only got a few more minutes left.
That's true.
I hope you're going to be okay. I mean, I'm really worried now that
you're worried.
It's just not. It's not
you're
good news.
Worried.
I am worried, right? What?
I'm just writing a post for everyone on the Central Coast, and if you do live on the Central Coast and you're listening to this, take heed. All of those living on the Central Coast, make your plans, get your go bags ready to evacuate, ensure you have the right insurance cover, and protect your pets, and make sure you're safe. Don't be a hero.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. I would like to shout out to the chat room some really great conversations. There's Alex79, Maced, 139, Johnson, me. There was, I think SJ is still there, or maybe, oh no, he's still there. Some Lexiphone, some really great contributions and discussions. So if you have never been in the chat, and love in night or love I night, also great discussions. So if you've never been in the chat room, please do come in and participate. Today was really quite spirited, and I enjoyed following it along as we're presenting you the show. Really great stuff, and I will follow all the links and see what you guys posted in there. So if you're never seeing this, if you haven't seen it, come in. If you're in the archive right now, maybe on YouTube, come on a live broadcast on a Sunday or Saturday night if you're in the States, and hopefully you can join the conversation, because that's what it's about, right? We're not here to talk at you, even though for the most part we are. We want to have a conversation, right? And like I said, the show today was largely inspired by Stephen Lutz, who or Lutz, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, who pointed out that Helen Wambach in fact had done some future life progression and not just past life regression. So this was completely, and that's the music. Look, don't go away. I think Gerber is field.
Yeah, thank you. I'll tend to field now. Thank you, boss. All right, take care, everyone. See you next week.